It is my privilege and honor to be joined by my good friend and six-time Grand Slam champion, Rennae Stubbs from Wimbledon. Thanks for being with us, Rennae. I know it's 10 o'clock your time. Thank you for skipping the bar to talk to me instead.
Well, technically, I've already been to the bar and I'm doing this. And then I may end up back in the bar, Carolyn, because it's been a long day. It's been an emotional day at Wimbledon in so many ways. My player lost her match in 3 sets today. Also, just what went on at Wimbledon today was crazy.
Let's start with your player, Sam Stosur. What happened today?
Well, it's been an interesting couple of years for Sam. Obviously, anybody who follows tennis knows that Sam, has had a great career, has been number 4 in the world, won the US Open and won that amazing match against Serena in 2011, and has just been a stalwart on the tour. And she, her partner had a baby last year. So during the pandemic, she decided rather than play, during the COVID issues and pandemic, and also being from Australia, it's very difficult to get away from Australia, and you've got to quarantine for the 2 weeks. Nobody's allowed to get out of that, even someone as famous as her in Australia. So she decided to stay home and take the entire year off last year with the pandemic. And then she came back in Australia, and then also, of course, having to leave Australia, you have to leave the entire time, or you've got to go back and do the 2-week quarantine. So then she got injured, so she hasn't played a lot of matches this year. So coming back onto the grass is never really her favorite surface. So I was hoping that she was this close to maybe winning her match today, but a great effort from Shelby Rogers to win in 3 sets. But Sam will be looking forward to the hard court, I can tell you that.
Yeah, good. What's it been like for you? Because you've been with her as her coach in the bubble. We've seen a little bit of your experience. You detailed that on ESPN during their Wimbledon coverage. But what's it been like for you to be a part of this process? You can almost feel the energy from here in the United States that there's such an excitement around being back at Wimbledon. What's it been like for you from the inside?
Yes, well, I played, I believe, I don't know if it was 22 or something like Grand Slams, Wimbledon's myself. So for me, every year coming back here, whether it was playing or then, of course, doing television now for ESPN, it's such a privilege and there's such a special feeling to walk through the gates here at Wimbledon. And so to not have that experience last year was so devastating. It was so devastating that I even ordered a towel from the 2020 Wimbledon shop just so I had it in my house, even though I don't even know, you've been to my place, you know how many Wimbledon towels I have. So it's the most special place for every tennis player. It's probably the one and only place that players really take photos of as well, because of the beauty of the actual grounds at the All England Club. So to be back here this year, and of course with fans, I mean, every single time the players are asked about this impress, the first thing they go to is it was just so great to play in front of fans again. And Roger even said that today in his post-match. He said it just would have really, I think he might have said it really would have sucked to play at Wimbledon without crowd. So just to have the fans here, and the British fans in particular, so knowledgeable about tennis. So in general, just to miss last year during the because of the pandemic, to be back here this year is really special for everybody.
I do love when it's described as the cathedral of tennis, because I think from the white to how perfectly manicured the grass is to the scene, and you mentioned the knowledge that the fans have, it seems like a very, very special place. The club is under some scrutiny here stateside after what happened to Serena Williams on the court today. What is your reaction being there to the incident that took place that forced her to withdraw early?
Well, I think what happened was, unfortunately, we had a really terrible incident in the match prior to Serena walking on the court. Of course, Roger Federer was in the 4th set of his match. He was down 2-1 to Manno from France. And Manno took a really bad step where, look, you're playing on a natural surface. And anybody who's been on grass, whether it's on a golf course or, playing soccer in the backyard, you're going to tend to slip sometimes because your foot doesn't grab the grass sometimes the way you want it to. And that's just a natural occurrence on natural grass. So Manno take a terrible fall, and he hurt his knee so badly that he had to stop the match. Now, unfortunately, through the years, we've had a lot of spills like that on grass, because the early days of playing on grass, it's very green. It can be very slippery. So you've got to be very careful with the way you move. You move a little bit differently on grass to what you do on clay and what you do on hard court. So this is a normal occurrence at Wimbledon where we have falls and slips. The unfortunate thing is that Mannarino had to default his match to Roger in the very first game of the fifth set. And then subsequently, immediately afterwards, Serena comes on. And in my opinion, she's already coming onto the court with an injury, whether it be, I don't want to speculate on it because we don't have the official terms, but she did have her hamstring or leg taped. So you'd have to assume that it had something to do with her hamstring or groin or whatever it was. So she makes a bit of a slip. It wasn't a bad one. It was nothing like Mannarino's. And then, of course, everyone jumps on the bandwagon that the grass is too slippery and this is a problem. But in my opinion, my expert opinion, because I played 22 years at Wimbledon, she did slip. It was minor, but for me, it looked like it was the exasperation of the injury that she took onto the court. And so, unfortunately, because of what happened, then, of course, everyone jumps on the bandwagon of it's the grass and it's dangerous and all this sort of stuff. But unfortunately, in this situation, it was just, I don't know if it's bad timing or just, it just looked bad because of what happened the match before. So unfortunately, I think with Serena, I think she was carrying an injury walking onto the court.
So in your expert opinion, the All England Club hasn't done anything differently in terms of prepping this court than they've done at previous Wimbledons?
No, listen, I will be perfectly honest. I'm in the hotel bubble, so I'm with all the players because I'm a coach of a player. And I did run into Andy Murray a couple of hours ago. And I did ask him about the court because, of course, he played that great match the night before. And I said, how is the court for you? Because there's probably not many people that have played more matches on centre court at Wimbledon than Andy, other than, say, Roger and Serena. And he said, yeah, it did feel a little bit slippery. It did feel different to what it has in the past. But also he played, a 4-set match and he fell over maybe once or twice, but nothing that could, because you understand you have to move differently on a grass court, particularly in the early stages of the tournament. And Roger even expressed that in his post-match interview in press, where he said, look, you've just, grass it's slippery at the start of the tournament. So you have to be very careful with the way you move. And sometimes you move a certain way. It's a natural thing that you do because you're a tennis player and you want to explode to the ball. But unfortunately, you can have those times where the little pimples on the bottom of the shoe that we wear, they don't grab the pimple. So it grabs the edge of the shoe where it doesn't have the pimple, and then you're going to get that sliding experience. So, look, Andy did say it was a little bit more slippery than he's used to. But, we haven't played at Wimbledon courts for 2 years, so maybe the grass is a little bit different. But this is not the club's fault. This is grass. We had an incident maybe 4 years ago where we had like 7 really bad falls in a back-to-back day period, and everyone again was calling for, what are we doing? The grass, da, 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 da. And of course, everyone forgets about it, the next year because we don't have those same kinds of things. I just think, Carolyn, the back-to-back with Mannarino and then with what happened to Serena has just exasperated this issue that unfortunately it happens from time to time.
What did you make of her reaction? I mean, of course, the disappointment is there and she's so emotional. She had been waiting for 2 years essentially to get this chance. And then you look at who's not available to play on the women's side. And again, it's this narrative that circles back around of, is this going to be the one where she finally gets it done? Is this going to be the one where it's the 24th Grand Slam for her? Is the path there for her? And I think that narrative probably carries an incredible amount of pressure and incredible burden in and of itself. But to me, when she was forced to accept the reality that Wimbledon was going to be over for her in this way at this time, there seemed to be an overwhelming sadness that didn't have anything to do with the slip or the court, or there wasn't any, kind of like furious reaction to the playing condition. It more seemed just so disappointing. And I'm curious, knowing her the way you do, what was your takeaway from the way that she reacted to the early exit? Utter sadness. And I was watching it with my player, Sam Stosur, who, of course, beat Serena in her one Grand Slam victory at the US Open. So the amount of respect that Serena holds in this game for every player, even someone like Sam. Sam actually said to me, we were watching it as it was happening. And when Serena went to serve that time and, you could see the tears in her face because you knew that what is going, we've all done this, all players, we all feel this feeling of, I know I can't physically play this match, but I don't know how to quit because I'm a competitor and I don't want to ever quit. And you could see it in her face. I don't want to stop. I want to give this a try.
But in your mind, you're saying, I cannot physically do this. And it is the worst feeling. We saw it in the match before with Manno. He knew his knee wasn't capable of finishing that match, but he didn't want to stop. So for me, sadly, watching it was just devastating, because for me, Serena is the greatest player of all time. To know that she was not going to finish that match on her terms, on the court that has been so vital for her career and has had so much success on that particular court, to walk off that court in tears, limping like she could barely get off the court, was brutal to watch. And, I was literally sitting next to Sam watching it on my phone, streaming it on ESPN. We were waiting for our takeout in the hotel. And we were both just like, Sam said, I want to cry for her, because we all respect her so much. So to see her go out like that was pretty terrible.
Yeah, I think a lot of people shared the emotion that Sam was feeling. I mean, you really emotionally felt for her, and it felt so real, so authentic, and so gut-wrenching, to be honest. Does this change anything for her in terms of her Olympic plans? I know she's surprised some people when she said that she didn't have any plans on competing at Tokyo. Is she solely focused on adding to her Grand Slam total? Where does she go from here?
Look, I don't know for sure. I mean, I just saw her come back to the hotel. She was limping coming through the front door, limping to her room. She's still in her match outfit, which, is a sign that we all players know we just want to get out of there, as quickly as possible and get back to her room. I don't want to make any, I don't want to speculate at all, but if I had to speculate, the chances of her playing in the Olympics is like 0.0001%. I mean, there's no chance. The thing that has kept Serena going this whole time is to try and capture that 24th Grand Slam, and now for her not getting it here at Wimbledon, which we all agreed as experts that this was her best chance to win it. To get to that 24, just because it lends itself to her game to play on grass. I think that's her only major focus. Look, she's won multiple gold medals at the Olympics in singles and doubles. That's not her focus. Her focus is the Grand Slams, and I think the only thing that's going to keep her playing tennis right now is the US Open. And I think that's going to be a big ask. Look, if it is her hamstring, which I don't want to speculate, but it certainly looked like that. I mean, and if it's any kind of a rupture or strain, that's a minimum of 6 weeks, so you can count the Olympics out.
Jeez. It's just a lot to process, because everyone has been rooting for her to get that slam, to eclipse that record, because like you said, she is the greatest of all time. And I think so many people feel as though she deserves to hold that record outright. And with each passing opportunity, it seems to become dimmer and dimmer, which is perhaps why this was so gut-wrenching for so many. But, in your opinion, is that next Grand Slam win still possible? Is it possible at the US Open?
Well, I'll never say never when it comes to Serena. The US Open has notoriously been so difficult in some respects, because it's always meant so much to her to win it at home in New York. So, look, can she do it? Yes, of course. But again, this is an injury that if it is any kind of a tear, or even if it's a minor microfibril tear, that's going to be, as I said, at least a month. And Serena needs matches. She needs to be able to win those matches against these players, so when she walks into a Grand Slam, she feels like she can beat them at any time. Serena 10 years ago or even 6 years ago could maybe not play a lot of lead-up tournaments and walk onto the court and just have that aura and presence about her to be able to win those matches. But now, she doesn't have that same aura, and it's because she has been vulnerable over the last couple of years, and we've seen it with some losses. So, and it doesn't take away from her greatness. It's just reality, right? It's just reality of life, that when you lose matches and people see that you are vulnerable and you can lose, they feel like they can win. So, look, do I think she can do it? Of course, I always hold out for that. I think I'll be really frank with you. I think it sucks that we moved the goalpost, because as far as I'm concerned, Steffi Graf's 22 Grand Slams was the record that should have been the bar, because it was the Open era record. Margaret Court's at 24 was a record that really wasn't talked about when Steffi was getting to 22 because Margaret won an enormous amount of Grand Slams at the Australian Open where really no international players were playing. Now, that's not to take away from Margaret's record, but for me, the record was 22. So for me, in my opinion, Serena has the record at 23. That will be the Open era record for me, and that's exactly where it should be.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do those inside the tennis community who also have the full context and breadth of, different eras in tennis share that opinion?
Yes, absolutely. I think anyone who knows, you just have to look at a draw at the Australian Open when Margaret Court was winning. And, the majority of people playing that tournament were Australian because either no one wanted to fly that way because, it was expensive and it was very different back in that day. And also people were not even playing the Australian Open because they were playing a smaller tournament in the US because it was paying more money and the prestige of the Australian Open was not what it is today. So for me, absolutely, anybody, in my opinion, of a certain era understands that the Open era record was Steffi's and Serena has 23. So therefore, in our opinion, she is the greatest player of all time.
Kind of sounds like a silly question, but before we move on, do you think that Serena Williams views it through that prism as well? Do you think that she believes that, she's the greatest of all time and owns that record in that context?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that she's gotten to the point finally recently where she knows it's not going to define her as who she is. And I think great champions over time realize that it doesn't define them. And I think she's getting to that point just because she's a mom now. And I think what really was motivating her, to be really honest, I think what was motivating her more than the record was winning a Grand Slam as a mom and showing her daughter that moment, that trophy. And, Olympia is with her all the time and she's so great and she's so awesome to be around. And she just is so in love with her mom and they have such this great relationship. So for me, it was more about her winning a Grand Slam as a mom. I think that meant more to her than actually passing the record, or if not more, certainly on equal terms. So, looking at that like as a holistic way of thinking, I think she's happy that she's a mom, that she has a great kid, and that she is still out here competing. And I think she's maybe not so obsessed with that record anymore, because I hope she's not, because we all think that was not the record to break.
Yeah, and one thing I'm sure will happen is that as Olympia matures, she will see the resiliency in her mom and her commitment and relentlessness and in not giving up. And there are lessons certainly to be passed on to a daughter in that regard as well. But let's move on.
Carolyn, I tell you, in 20 years' time, we might see her on the tour because, wow, what a little she's so good.
I know. I was going to say, if she doesn't see her mom win a slam, her mom might see her win a slam. Not very long from now. But let's talk about Auntie Venus for a little while, because I know that you're very close with Venus Williams as well. And what she's doing past the age of 40 is also remarkable. It must have given you a great sense of joy to see her winning, competing, fighting through everything that she's been through as well.
Yeah, Venus, and I love Venus so much. And the fact that at 41, she went against a good player today in Buzanescu, but just the fact that she's still out there and she still loves it so much and competing and winning, and God bless her. I didn't see the press conference, but I have heard a few quotes that she just keeps playing because she loves the WTA medical insurance. And I have to say, Carolyn, it is pretty good insurance. And as we know, as both living in America and living in the United States, health insurance is a bitch. Okay, let's just be honest. So, the health insurance of the WTA is really good. So Venus is, God love her. She even said it today. She said it on my Racket Magazine podcast, and now she said it on ESPN. So we know that it really means a lot to her. So as long as she keeps playing and getting that insurance, she'll be happy. But you know what? She's such an incredible inspiration for anybody out there that is told, maybe it's time, maybe you should think about something else. She's like, why would I do that? I love doing what I'm doing. And when you get that look, she's won 5 Wimbledon titles. And for her to win a first round here is like, whatever. But for her to see her win that first round today and the joy that exudes out of her body, it's like, who doesn't want to see that? So she's got a tough one against Ons Jabeur tomorrow on court 1, but at least she's on a big court, which is so deserved of a 5-time champion. But I don't care. I just want to keep her here, because who doesn't love to see her compete? And I mean, it was really hard for me to talk about her without just exuding just how much I appreciate and love her. So there it is. That's all I've got for you on her.
She's the best. So day one featured some upsets, I think was probably the storyline, at least here stateside, with Frances Tiafoe and also Sloane Stephens. I mean, what do you make of their play so far? That was great for the Americans on day one. And then, of course, day two, Serena Williams is going to be the big takeaway. But, so far in the tournament, outside of what we saw today with Serena, what have some of your takeaways been, some of your impressions of how the Americans have played, or who really might be making a run in this tournament that you maybe didn't expect?
Well, I mean, not overly shocked, because, Sloane Stephens is a Grand Slam champion, but a really tough round against two-time champion at Wimbledon and Petra Kvitova, who obviously has had a bit of an injury coming over the last couple of weeks and hasn't played well. But, to beat Petra on centre court at Wimbledon with Petra's pedigree here at Wimbledon was a really amazing effort from Sloane. So, listen, Sloane is a danger. Madison Keys is also a danger on grass. Frances's match was just amazing. I mean, I love the fact that he admitted, look, if this was on an outside court, I might not have had the result that I had today, because he loves the big time. He's in the lobby here. He's in the bar. They're not drinking, but he's in the bar, and he's like walking around, and he's like, he's like Mr. at the hotel. He's a people person. I love him. He's just such a great personality for tennis, and what an amazing win over Tsitsipas. Players like Denis Kudla from the United States came back from 2 sets to love down. So I think the one person that I did say that was going to be an outside chance, I don't think he's going to win the tournament, but I think he'll have a great tournament, is Seb Korda, who had a great win today over Alex de Minaur from Australia, who just won a lead-up tournament a few days ago. And I said whoever won that match was going to have a good tournament. So Seb won in 5 sets today. Of course, his sister just won back-to-back LPGA tournaments, including a major, and is now the world number 1 in women's golf. So there's some pressure on Seb to get his shit together, okay, to outdo his sister now, because this is like the greatest sporting family in the world right now, with Jessica and Nelly, who, of course, just won those tournaments and world number 1, and now Seb. So there's a bit of pressure on him. Of course, his dad was a Grand Slam champion. His mom was a former top 50 player. So, I mean, the greatest athletics family of all time is the Korda family right now. So watch out for Seb Korda, because he is, in my opinion, a future Grand Slam champion. So things are happening for American tennis. Jessica Pegula, I could go on. There's so many Americans that are doing so well right now in Grand Slam tennis, particularly the women. But, watch out for Seb Korda.
I think that's such a fun storyline heading into the Olympics. I mean, you and I kind of doing the Olympics coverage together. The Korda family, if people don't know, I mean, you just said, but you just look them up. They're like a superhuman athlete family. They're so much fun.
Crazy. The dad's over here because he's sort of helped, he's like a little bit of a mental coach / tennis coach / dad, and mom's with the sisters. Regina, she's over with the sisters. And I mean, they're just ruling the world. It's like crazy.
Why do you think that the Americans are doing so well right now? I mean, is this the payoff from something that's been in the works for a long, long time? It does seem like, at least on this stage anyway, we're seeing a number of Americans, young Americans, performing well under the pressure, which hasn't necessarily been the case in the past.
Well, I think I've always said that success breeds success, right? So in my opinion, for example, when you start seeing your peers doing well, you're like, oh, why can't I do well? I mean, we practice together all the time. I beat her in practice, or I beat him in practice. So I think you just start seeing success, and then you go, okay, well, I could be doing that as well. So I think that's what's happening, particularly with the women. I mean, take your pick. There's so many. We didn't even talk about Coco Gauff, who won her match today, her first round. And, she's in that section now, down the bottom there. Serena was. She could definitely get through in that section of the draw. Angie Kerber is also down there. It's going to benefit from Serena now not being in the tournament. So, we're talking Coco Gauff, Jessica Pegula, Maddie Key, Sloane Stephens. I mean, the list is long. Sophia Kenin, who won her match yesterday. And then, of course, Seb Korda. So hopefully Seb Korda will start sort of pushing the Frances Tiafoes to start doing well, and getting more out of his talent. But I think it's always been the case that success breeds success, and hopefully we're going to continue to see that with both the men and the women in American tennis.
What have you made of, I know it was somewhat condensed today, what have you made of Roger Federer's play so far?
Well, I'll tell you what, Carolyn, he was very lucky to win his match today because, of course, we'd already talked about Manno hurting himself and having to default. But, look, life doesn't get easier when you're 39, 40 years of age in the tennis tour, and particularly with men's tennis being best of 5. And these guys all come out now and they really believe that they can beat anyone. And, I did see him come back to the hotel as well. He came back a little bit before Serena. And he didn't look overly happy. I think he's probably a little bit stressed with the fact that he's not winning these matches a bit easier. But Manno is also a very tricky opponent, lefty, great feel. He's given Roger problems in the past. We'll see. I think it's a wait and see. Look, if Roger gets into the second, third, fourth rounds of Wimbledon and he starts and his body handles that amount of tennis, because playing on grass is very taxing on your body as well. You'd be surprised. It's actually it's a lot more taxing in my opinion than on clay, because on clay you get to slide, you get to relieve the body a little bit. On grass it's very, you got to be careful with how you move and all this sort of things, and you got to get lower so your butt, and we call it grass ass because your butt gets really sore playing on grass because you bend a bit lower. So we'll see how he reacts emotionally after this match that he got out of. Maybe it's like an incredible lucky moment where he's like, all right, I'm going to run with this and take advantage. So we'll see. We'll see how he goes. We all know he can play on grass better than anybody in the draw, so other than maybe Novak.
Is there anybody on the men's side that you think poses a significant threat to Novak Djokovic?
No. I think that Novak, in my opinion, when Novak beat Rafa, and then he subsequently won the French Open, for me, I said he will win the Grand Slam, meaning all 4 Grand Slams this year. And he's held all 4 Grand Slams in the past, but not in a calendar Grand Slam. And nobody has done that since Steffi Graf did it. And ironically, Steffi, the year she won the Grand Slam, she also won the gold medal at the Olympics. So is that in Novak's future? I will say that if there was ever a person that could do that same thing that Steffi did, it is without question Novak Djokovic. So for me, he's overwhelming favorite to win here. He is overwhelming favorite to win the US Open. It's just a matter of can he win the Olympics? Because the difference with the Olympics, Carolyn, is that it's over 3 sets for the men. So there's a few more upsets when it's 3 sets as opposed to 5 sets. Because when you have to beat the great champions over 5 sets, it is emotionally unbelievably hard, and it is physically as hard as you can ever get. So the difference which is why you have more upsets and regular ATP tournaments as opposed to Grand Slams, because the Grand Slams are over 5 sets, and to be able to beat the greats over 5 is very hard to do.
So when he came out and dropped that first set to Draper to start this campaign, in your opinion, that was nothing more than maybe waking up or realizing, hey, I can't, sleepwalk through this opponent, or a little bit of hangover from the French. I mean, nothing that would indicate to you that he's not going to continue to do exactly what we've seen him do.
Yeah, I think you already touched on it. It was a bit of a hangover from the French. He probably took a bunch of days off. He probably took 3 to 4 days off. He went and played a little doubles last week in Mallorca, where the grass is very different to what it is here in England. Draper, obviously a lefty English player who's been playing on this grass for a month probably. He's played a ton of tennis, and he was very comfortable, and good for him because he came out playing very well. But Novak just kind of looked a little bit off and not really himself. And then what we saw in the second, third, and fourth sets.
Yeah,
that's what everybody's going to see for the rest of the tournament, which is not good for anybody else.
What does he have in common with Steffi that makes you think that he can do what she did in a calendar year? Is that more mental fortitude, or being physically more talented than everybody else, or some kind of amazing combination of both?
I think it's an absolute combination of both. And I think when you said, the first thing that popped in my head was just dominance. They're just so dominant right now. Rafa had the edge over Novak on clay, so there wasn't always the total dominance. But then once Novak beat Rafa on clay, and you saw how he grinded him down in that match, the dominance is the word that I see. And so for me, I think to beat him over 5 sets is going to take a really special person. And look, he was down 2-0 in the finals against Tsitsipas at the French Open, and he still found a way to win, because to do 3 sets against, arguably in my opinion, going to be the greatest player of all time with the amount of Grand Slams that he owns is a very hard task for anybody. So I think he's without question going to, I'm not going to say without question because we never know what's going to happen. I mean, look what happened to him at the US Open last year. But, for me, he's going to win all the slams. I think the toughest one for him to win will be the Olympics because it is over 3 sets and you can just get a hot player like a Tsitsipas who can win the first 2 sets against you and win a match. So that will be the harder one for him to win, believe it or not, will be the Olympics because it's best of 3.
Do you think that that's something that is motivating him? Is that the sort of milestone that would really get a player excited?
Yeah. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's the answer. And, he has not done well at the Olympics in the past. And I remember him walking off the court in Rio and he was in tears and it devastated him because, as much as you win on the tour, playing for your country is a whole different animal. You are so much more nervous playing the Olympics or Davis Cup or Fed Cup for the women or the Billie Jean King Cup, I should call it now, than you are playing a regular tournament. It's hard to explain because you're not playing for yourself, and it means almost more to you because you've got that flag on your back or in your sleeve or whatever, in the front of you or your hat or whatever it is. You've got your teammates there. So I think that that's why he'll want to do it. I think he'll assess how he feels physically after winning Wimbledon. But for me, I think that's a huge, because there is no question if he wins all 4 Grand Slams and the gold medal, that there's no doubt he will know that he will go down as the greatest player of all time.
Rennae, we got to take a look at Ash Barty, who, of course, is a fan favorite. And I loved the way that she reacted at the end of her win against Carlos Suarez Navarro. For those who aren't familiar with Carla's story, can you just tell us a little bit, give us an inside perspective on how special what this woman is accomplishing is?
Wow. I tell you what, she told everybody last year that this was going to be her last year, 2020. And then, of course, the pandemic. And then not only was the pandemic, but guess what? She gets cancer. So, I mean, we found out at the US Open last year, and I remember thinking to myself, no, you have never met a nicer, kinder human being in your entire life that is so well liked on the tour. I mean, there's not one person on tour that would dislike this girl. So when we found out that, it was just devastating for me in general. And, constantly communicating with her, checking in, how you're doing, and, talking about her chemo and this and that, and her losing her hair. And then all of a sudden, what do you know? She comes back this year. We see her back on the practice court. She starts, she's cancer-free. I would say probably 7 weeks ago, she started hitting 2-on-1. So she was one of the 2. So she couldn't do 1 because was getting too exhausted after about half an hour. She manages to get herself fit enough to be able to play the French Open. She loses a tough match to Sloane Stephens in 3 sets, which really she should have won. Then she comes here and she's drawn against the number 1 seed in Ash Barty. And so the only good thing about getting that kind of a draw is that she got to play on center court and open the court up for the women's draw, which was really phenomenal. So she goes out, she battles her way, wins the second set, which just is such just the epitome of Carla, right? To battle her way, but all of us knew she's going to be out of gas in the third set. And of course, Ash, being such a great player, handled that third set and won the match comfortably in the third. But just to see her face walking off the court and her mom in the crowd who's filming her walking off the court. I mean, all of us were crying because the mom is crying. I mean, it was so, and of course I'm here at the hotel. I saw her walk in and her mom, literally, Carolyn, as we all know, if we wear mascara and you cry, it runs. The mom still mascara is down the face. She walks in and we just, I said to Carla, Sam Stosur, my player, who admires Carla so much, walked over and just hugged her and just said, Carla, I just cannot believe what you've been able to do over the last 6 months, and to be back on the tennis court and playing the tennis that she was able to do over the last month has been unbelievable after just coming back from literally cancer and fighting cancer and is now cancer-free. To watch that today, and I said to her, I know it was terrible to get that draw because you could not have gotten a worse draw possibly in the women's tour draw than that one. But the fact that you almost won that match and you went 3 sets with the number one player in the world is just phenomenal. And it just shows you the kind of person and player and champion and fighter that Carla is. So it was great to see. Unfortunately, it was in the first round and we don't get to see her just hit that most beautiful one-handed backhand on that court again. But what a joy it was to see her play. And so I'm just so happy. You know what, in the end, Carolyn, it's about life, and she's healthy and she's cancer-free, and that's all that matters.
What did it show you about not only the kind of person she is, but the kind of person that Ash Barty is? I mean, I know you know Ash Barty. Certainly nobody's going to be giving away sets at Wimbledon for sentimentality, but I was really touched as well by the way that she showed such deferential, the way that she was so respectful. She had a real grace about her at the end of that as well that I found really profound.
Yeah, I mean, look, even Sloane, when Sloane beat her at the French, you could just see, I think Sloane actually muttered the words, "Can I hug you?" After the match. So everybody knows Ash is one of the, just most down-to-earth, very typical Aussie, just obviously wants to win and was probably very nervous walking onto the court herself. We always forget about that. We think, these players walk on the court and they're number one in the world. They don't have any emotions or they're not nervous. No, they're very nervous. So I'm sure she was very nervous going to that match because I'm sure she thought 99% of the tour would be for her opponent as well. So to see the way that she handled it in the end, and of course the grace that she showed, and, that's just the epitome of Ash. So, and as I said, I don't think there's one player on tour that probably wouldn't have reacted the same way if they had beaten Carla today. But the fact that it was Ash just kind of, it just enlightened her in even the light that we're used to seeing.
Is she the favorite on the women's side to win?
Now I really do believe. I mean, listen, a lot of us thought that Serena could do it if she could get a few matches under her belt and if her serve was working. But I did pick Ash to win the tournament at ESPN, and I still believe that she's the favorite. There's still a bit of a question mark just because she got that injury at the French, and my player Sam Stosur actually practiced with her a couple of days ago, and she looked great. She was moving around the court really well. So if she progresses through the tournament, there's no question that her confidence will rise. And she's a junior Wimbledon champion. She won when she was 15. So she knows how to play on grass. But she does have a couple of interesting possibilities through that draw, including Barbora Krejcikova, who won the French Open. I believe they may play in the 4th round, but there's a lot of tennis to go. But, yeah, she's my favorite to win the tournament.
Rennae Stubbs, thank you so much for being with us. Fascinating insight. We kept you way too long, so I'll let you go. But enjoy the rest of your time there, and we'll speak soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. See you soon. See you at the Olympics.